Socrates on psychedelics. You will never see life the same way again. The life you perceive might just be a shadow. What if the certainties you hold on to are merely illusions, crafted by habit, haste, and the fear of questioning? Socrates once said, "All I know is that I know nothing." This statement resonates even more when we consider the impact of altered states of mind, whether induced by radical experiences, the silence of meditation, or even psychedelics. But hold on, I'm not talking about escaping reality. I'm talking about confronting the raw truth that disarms the soul and reveals the fragility of our own consciousness. What you're about to discover could turn your worldview upside down. And perhaps, after this, you'll never see life the same way again. The cave of consciousness. Imagine yourself inside Plato's cave. Shadows dance on the walls, and you, like everyone around you, believe that's reality. But Socrates would remind us, what if we're just looking at distorted reflections of the truth? This metaphor perfectly illustrates how we live today, often prisoners of unconscious habits, social media that fuels comparisons, and quick news that shapes opinions without reflection. In daily life, how often do you pick up your phone without realizing it? How many times do you find yourself scrolling without remembering why you started? This automatic behavior is the modern cave. Ignorance, in this case, is believing that what we see on screens is the entirety of life. The consequence: a fragmented soul, thirsty for likes, but empty of self-awareness. Socrates would provoke, "Know thyself." This isn't just an ancient motto, it's the key to breaking free from the chains of distraction. Self-awareness emerges when we start to question, why am I doing this? What am I really seeking here? Without this inquiry, wisdom doesn't flourish, and virtue gets lost in consumerism. Modern psychology studies confirm repeated behaviors shape the brain, creating automatic circuits of dependency. When we don't reflect, we hand over our freedom to the invisible gears of habit. But philosophy can be the antidote. Just as the practice of meditation helps reprogram the mind, Socratic philosophy compels us to stop, reflect, and look beyond the surface. Think about it. It's not enough to leave the cave. We must face the light. The initial pain of discomfort is the price of truth. Ignorance is comfortable, but it confines us. Reflection is tough, but it liberates. In seeking virtue, we discover that true freedom isn't about doing what we want, but wanting what truly resonates with our soul. So, the question arises, are we willing to abandon the shadows? Or do we prefer the comfortable illusion? Have you ever realized you were living in a cave without noticing? Share your thoughts in the comments. The mirror of emotions. Imagine looking into a mirror that reveals not just your body, but your soul. In it, you don't just see wrinkles or expression lines, you see reflections of your emotions, fears, virtues, or their absence. Socrates would say, this mirror is the internal dialogue, the constant questioning that reveals not who we appear to be, but who we truly are. In daily life, this mirror manifests when you feel envy scrolling through social media. It's that tightness in your chest, seeing others' perfect lives compared to your mundane routine. The ignorance lies in believing these images reflect reality. The consequence? Anxiety, low self-esteem, and a silent detachment from self-knowledge. As Aristotle reminds us, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Philosophical reflection invites us to see that often we react automatically, without examining the reasons behind our emotions. If we don't understand our feelings, they control us. If we don't investigate our desires, we end up governed by them. Research in psychology shows that social comparison, intensified by social media, is linked to increased depression and personal dissatisfaction. It's like living in front of a distorted mirror, believing the reflection is real. But the Socratic exercise of asking, "Why do I feel this way?" opens up space for virtue to flourish. The soul, previously dominated by illusion, begins to breathe truth. This practice isn't simple. It requires courage to admit that many emotions do not originate from us, but from imposed patterns. Consumerism, for example, sells the idea that happiness lies in objects, when, in reality, it's just a fleeting escape. The philosophical solution lies in cultivating the habit of questioning, which, like polishing, cleans the mirror and brings us closer to our essence. So, I ask you, have you ever stood in front of the mirror of your emotions without looking away? Or do you still believe that the image the world offers you is the only one possible? Have you had the courage to face this inner mirror? Share your thoughts in the comments. Asterisk, asterisk. The poison of haste. Asterisk, asterisk. Imagine a river flowing endlessly. The water doesn't choose where to go. It just follows the current, never stopping to question the purpose of its movement. Modern life, with its constant rush, turns us into that river. We rush from task to task, from goal to goal, believing that living means accumulating commitments. But Socrates would ask, what's the value of a life that's never examined? In our routines, ignorance appears when we confuse busyness with meaning. It's the frenzy of responding to instant messages, filling our schedules, consuming content without absorbing anything. The consequence is clear: digital anxiety, a chronic sense of time scarcity, and a soul that always feels restless, as if something essential is slipping through our fingers. Epictetus once stated, "No man is free if he is not master of himself." Haste is a form of disguised slavery, preventing us from practicing reflection, robbing us of self-knowledge, and distancing us from virtue. Those who rush too much fail to notice what they're losing. Neuroscience studies show that living in a constant state of haste and multitasking drains the brain, reducing focus and memory capacity. It's as if the excess speed erases the chance for true wisdom. Philosophy, in this scenario, invites us to slow down, to stop, breathe, and ask ourselves, why the urgency? Just as the river needs banks to avoid losing its way, we need limits to avoid being swallowed by the rush. The Socratic solution is simple yet challenging. Cultivate moments of silence, pause, and intentional reflection. Only in the space between thoughts can truth emerge. And then the inevitable question arises: are we racing toward life or fleeing from it? Is this haste, in fact, a mask for the fear of confronting our inner void? Have you noticed how much haste has stolen from your life? Share your thoughts in the comments. Asterisk, asterisk, the labyrinth of truth. Asterisk, asterisk, imagine being lost in a vast labyrinth. Each corridor seems promising, but as you move forward, you find yourself in a dead end. This is what the search for truth feels like amid the overload of information we consume daily. Ignorance here isn't the lack of content, but the excess of it, suffocating the soul and confusing reflection. Socrates would look at this scenario and ask, what's the point of accumulating answers if you haven't learned to ask the right questions? In everyday life, This labyrinth manifests in the avalanche of opinions on social media. One piece of news contradicts another. Each influencer proclaims their version of the truth, and we, caught in the noise, become disoriented. The consequence? Epistemic anxiety, the feeling of never knowing whom to trust. A recent study on information overload shows that excessive digital stimuli are directly linked to increased stress and decision paralysis. In other words, the more we try to know, the less we can act. Plato warned us with his allegory of the cave. Confusing shadows with reality is a fatal error. But today, the shadows aren't on the walls of a cave. They're on screens, in feeds, in algorithms that feed us fragments of convenient truths. Without self-knowledge, we become easy prey for the consumerism of ideas. Virtue gets lost, replaced by superficial beliefs that shift with the trends of the moment. Philosophy emerges as the thread of Ariadne in this labyrinth. Questioning, reflecting, and seeking wisdom is the path that guides us back to the center. Socrates believed that truth isn't a destination, but a continuous process of dialogue, both internal and external. So, the solution isn't about having all the answers, but learning to endure uncertainty, cultivating critical thinking as a fundamental virtue. However, facing this path requires courage. It's much easier to accept the first appealing opinion than to doubt it. It's simpler to share a catchy quote than to delve deeper into its reflection. But the consequence of living without this examination is clear. We remain trapped in circular corridors, spinning in circles within the labyrinth of ignorance. Thus, the real challenge isn't to find the exit, but to recognize that perhaps there isn't a single final door. Truth, as Socrates taught, is a journey of constant reconstruction, and self-knowledge is the compass that keeps us from losing ourselves. Have you ever felt lost in the labyrinth of information, unsure which truth to believe? Share your thoughts in the comments. Asterisk, asterisk, the abyss of self-knowledge. Asterisk, asterisk. Imagine standing before a deep abyss. On one side lies the security of the certainties you've always carried. On the other, the terrifying emptiness of the unknown. This is the place where Socrates leads us when he states, "The unexamined life is not worth living." There's no more precise metaphor for the moment we are forced to confront our own soul. The abyss isn't outside, it's within us, and it takes courage to look without turning away. In everyday life, this abyss reveals itself in the crises we avoid facing. The loneliness we drown in binge-watched series, the anxiety we numb with consumption, the dissatisfaction we hide behind rehearsed smiles. Ignorance is believing that fleeing solves anything. The consequence is clear: a fragmented existence sustained by distractions. As Seneca warned, while we waste time hesitating, life passes. Here, philosophy puts us against the wall. The Socratic questioning isn't gentle. It's uncomfortable, destabilizing, almost cruel. It asks without mercy, who are you when no one is watching? What do you truly desire beyond social masks? What virtue remains in your life when the applause stops? These questions resonate like hammers cracking the rock of illusion. And perhaps that's why many prefer never to reach this point. But it's in this confrontation that true wisdom is born. Modern science confirms that facing emotional pain, rather than fleeing from it, allows the mind to reorganize. Studies on resilience show that those who confront their wounds develop greater clarity, purpose, and gratitude. Socrates sensed this centuries ago. There's no virtue without self-knowledge, no truth without reflection. And then come the repeated blows that strike us like hammers. What if everything you believe is merely an illusion? What if you've never truly known yourself? What if the life you call your own is just an echo of others' expectations? These questions resonate like thunder, leaving no escape. Each one opens a crack in the ground beneath our feet, forcing us to choose. Continue believing in shadows, or leap into the transformative abyss. The leap isn't outward, but inward. What seems like an abyss is, in fact, a portal, a space for the soul's reconstruction. It's there that virtue is reborn, where truth begins to be glimpsed, where philosophy ceases to be mere theory and becomes breathing. Sócrates doesn't offer ready-made answers. He compels us to dig deep within ourselves. Have you ever dared to look into your own abyss? Have you had the courage to face yourself without masks? Share your thoughts in the comments. Asterisk, asterisk. The Garden of Wisdom. Asterisk, asterisk. Imagine a garden. At first, it's just dry soil, covered in stones and weeds. But with daily care, patience, and attention, little by little, flowers begin to bloom. Such is the soul when it decides to cultivate self-knowledge. After the abyss comes the chance for reconstruction. And Sócrates would remind us that true virtue isn't in knowing everything, but in recognizing our own ignorance and still choosing to plant. In daily life, this garden appears in small choices. The moment you turn off your phone to truly listen to someone, the instant you choose to reflect before reacting to a harsh comment, the decision to read something that expands your mind instead of consuming fleeting distractions. Ignorance lies in believing that wisdom will come all at once, like a sudden enlightenment. The consequence is frustration and a return to the old cycle. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. This means that building the garden of the soul requires consistency. It's not enough to reflect once. We need to turn reflection into practice. What was once mere philosophical theory becomes concrete virtue in the way we live, speak, and act in the world. Science supports this path. Studies on gratitude, for example, show that writing down 3 things you're grateful for daily alters neural patterns and reduces symptoms of depression. The brain reorganizes to notice more of what uplifts rather than what oppresses. This simple exercise is like watering the garden with small doses of attention until truth blossoms in every daily gesture. The Socratic solution, then, is clear. Cultivate the habit of questioning, not as a burden, but as a liberating practice. Each question is a seed, each reflection a sprout, each practiced virtue a flower that blooms. The garden isn't built overnight, but reveals itself in silence, in the time of life, far from haste, close to the soul. And in the end, what once seemed like philosophy reveals itself as vital breath. The Garden of Wisdom isn't a distant place. It's the present lived with attention, courage, and truth. It's proof that, yes, after the abyss, there can be flowers. Are you willing to cultivate your own garden of wisdom, even if it takes a lifetime? Share your thoughts in the comments. In the end, it all comes down to this: the courage to look within. Not as an escape, but as a radical questioning. The limit experiences, including altered states of consciousness, only matter when they bring us back to the living philosophy of everyday life. Less noise, more reflection. Less pose, more truth. Less impulse, more virtue. When we accept our contradictions, the soul breathes. And self-knowledge ceases to be a distant ideal and becomes practice. An honest conversation with oneself. Today, now. This is how wisdom is born. Not from spectacle, but from the silence that listens and chooses. If something here resonated with you, write in the comments, "I choose examined truth." If this dialogue touched someone you love, subscribe and share so we can continue this exploration together. The next step may reveal something even deeper.